is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Sorry about Saturday. Turned on my laptop at 1:30 to get ready for the show. My computer's like, you know what? We're going to update now. And you know when that update finished? 4:49 p.m. Eastern. Almost went out and bought a whole new system. Probably should have. This piece of junk is like 300 years old, but here we are. I don't even remember the weekend slate, but we have a 5-gamer here tonight. We're going to be with you guys every day this week because, you know, when the NHL goes 2, 12, 3, 14, 3, they have to mix it up and have mid-range slates every day. Now, I don't really mind doing it every day as long as the slates aren't above like 10. So this won't be too bad. You're going to see our pretty bearded faces every day this week joining me, as always. Slim Cliffy, what's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. The Saturday slate was that fun one where Chicago dropped a 6th spot on Anaheim, and then Seattle dropped a 6th spot on Vancouver, but you didn't really need either team to cash or to win. Sorry. I think I pointed out in the Discord, the guy that won the $12 single entry, I believe it was, had San Jose and St. Louis. So another one of those weird nights where you didn't necessarily need the high scoring teams. You just needed the right guys getting the right goals. Interesting slate ahead of us here tonight. The games are all relatively early. 3 games at 7 Eastern, 1 at 7:30, 1 at 8:30. There's a game that's at 6:30 Eastern. I didn't even realize that because I was just going by the DK schedule. Washington and Ottawa played 6:30 Eastern, which is pretty rare.
Surprised they didn't put it on the slate too
for a weekday. I'm not. Look who we're talking about. So it's a 5-gamer, but there's a couple of smash spots and then 3 fairly even spots. So I think it leaves strategy and where you want to go pretty wide open because, listen, hockey is still a very random game. Even if there's a couple of smash spots, 2 teams can just fall on their faces on any given night. So interesting slate ahead of us here tonight. We're still trying to confirm one of the key teams as lines. Geez, speak, Mike. But we're going to get through it. Pretty interesting game right off the top that we're going to talk about because this might be a bloodbath rematch.
Yeah, and also about those smash spots. Obviously, Toronto's won, but their top line's above 24,000. That's a circus. And then the other smash spot, the Kings, no clue what their lines are going to be. So hopefully we get lines by the end of the show. I'm not going to hold my breath because usually when I hold my breath, I will pass out when it comes to one of those things. But let's get into this slate. Before we do, again, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us on a Monday afternoon. Over 100 of you here trickling in slowly. Again, if you do want to go premium, you can use promo code Stochastic15 on the top link. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. MLB is coming up. I know the subscriptions for that aren't live yet, but when they are, we will have some promo codes for you. And if you are looking to go into the sports betting side of things, you can click that Odd Shopper link below the Stochastic link. Sign up there. You can always check oddshopper.com or stochastic.com, see if they're running any special deals. Those deals would apply even when you go through the link, so check that out. First game of the night, we have the Buffalo Sabres with a 3 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens also with a 3 total. Montreal rolling out Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Line, Newhook, Owen Beck, Gallagher, Dvorak, Anderson. Buffalo, as far as I know, did they move Kulich back or are they still going 11-7?
That's a very good question. That's another team that didn't have anything for today. They did move Kulich back to the top line with Peterka and Thompson last game. They've been trying to go back to that line pretty regularly like the last 5-6 games. So I assume that's what the top lines can be. At least we'll know at 6:30 Eastern for warmups.
Yeah, and it's not that huge of a deal because Kulik is only $400 more than McLeod. I would imagine it's Kulik up there, but we'll have to wait and see. Second line is Tuck, Cousins, Greenway. Third line, Quinn, McLeod, Benson. This is an interesting one. I happen to like both top lines here, and they're both the same price, and they both have pretty much the same top two stack and very similar ownership. So it's like, what side are you leaning towards? And every time I talk about Montreal now, when their lineup is healthy, I know they got there like in very short time the other night, but their top guys aren't playing the 18, 19, 20 minutes that you want from a top line. Montreal is spreading out the ice time fairly evenly when Heineman's on the fourth line. I know the top line did get some pretty good minutes.
I was going to say with Kirby Dach out, they've been like Suzuki's been around 20 minutes because Owen Beck's only playing 10 to 11 minutes.
Yeah. Like Suzuki usually is the highest time of ice on anyone anyway. Slavkovsky may play his 16-17. Caulfield may get his 17-18. Suzuki usually gets around 20. 18-7 in this matchup is fine. It's a good power play matchup. That top line with Kulik, Thompson, and Peterka, very high event. They're very similar lines going up against each other. Now, the deciding factor to me, I think, I know home road, but I think the slight factor to me, and this is no offense to Cole Caulfield because he's our litter boy goals, Tage Thompson is the best player on the ice. And I think I would slightly lean to Buffalo just because you get Thompson and Peterka on the top power play. You get a really good 5-on-5 matchup. You get a really good power play matchup. Now, if you want to go to Montreal, that's perfectly fine. They're fully correlated in a good 5-on-5 and good power play matchup. When I'm stacking similar lines, I kind of want to see, is there a huge disparity between the top player of those six players? It's not huge. Thompson and Caulfield should have been on Team USA. They weren't, but Tage Thompson, I think, is the best player in this game. So I slightly lean to Buffalo 1. If you feel it's the other way, by all means, go for it. They're same price, same top two, same ownership, essentially. There's a lot of ownership on Buffalo, too. And I get it because, you get middle six matchups of Montreal, and that's just a mess right now. I will say, Anderson, Dvorak, Gallagher are least respectable defensively. They're actually decent, but 11.1% projected ownership on a line where you're only getting Tuck on the top power play unit. I think I'd rather just go to the top line or even just go to that third line that's even cheaper at 13-1 with 1.4% projected ownership. And you're still getting Quinn on the top power play unit. So I'd probably go to the third line before eating that ownership on the second line. And you save a lot of ownership and $1,600, but it's both top lines that I like in this game.
Yeah. Believe me, I'm going to remember that Thompson and Caulfield comment probably for the next 12 years.
Yeah, I will get roasted every time Cole Caulfield gets a goal, but it's what I believe down on my plums right now.
Okay. First thing to mention is, you said that both teams have a 3 total in this game. When I started going through the slate this morning, both teams were at 3.2. So this has gone from a 6.5 to a 6. I think that's fairly important to note. Now, we mentioned was it Saturday? Maybe it was Thursday. When team totals move like that, the only thing I take into account, I use it for is basically to guide ownership. Like generally speaking, if totals start going up, you'll see a lot more. I've found you see more ownership on those specific spots. Now, this is only a 5-game slate, so there are only so many places to go. But neither top line. It's funny how you say that these top lines mirror each other, because you're right. Like, both top lines are pretty good offensively and both top lines are pretty bad defensively. Buffalo won 3.4 expected goals per 60. Montreal won last 20 games, 3 expected goals per 60. Buffalo won 3.5 actual goals. Montreal won last 20 games, 3.2 actual goals. Like, these lines are very similar in both respects. I think the one thing that might sway it, what sways it to Montreal for me, is the power play matchup. Now, not to say that Montreal's power or penalty kill is good. Like, I think the kindest thing you could say about it is that it's average. Like, the goals against have been fine. A lot of it's been pretty good goaltending. You can't always rely on that. But for me, it's not the Montreal penalty kill, it's the Buffalo power play. Like, one thing that's kind of been understated about Buffalo's power play is Jason Zucker has been a big factor to their success on the power play this year. If you look at their shot attempts on the power play with and without Zucker, the top power play unit, I mean, specifically, the shot attempts go down 30% when Zucker's not on it, and the shot rate gets cut in half. The Buffalo power, I feel like it's one of those things, like, I'm slandering them now, so like the power play is going to go 2 for 3 tonight. But the Buffalo power play this season, the top unit without Jason Zucker has been flat out bad. Like, I'm talking Boston, Islanders, Los Angeles type bad. Whereas the Montreal power play on the flip side with Laine and Hudson there has been pretty good. Not elite, but good. I think that's the thing that flips it for me, is that this Buffalo power play without Zucker has really, really struggled. Tuck's a good player. I'm not sure he'll make the difference on the power play. Like, a 30% drop in shot attempts is a lot. I'm not sure that he can make that up. So I would lean to Montreal here in this game. Like you said, both top lines similarly priced, similar top two stack percentage. Montreal 10.8%, 7.4% ownership. Suzuki will be around 20 minutes. Like you said, Caulfield and Slafkovsky, 17 to 18. Like, that's fine. They're perfectly correlated. At home with the better power play, that I think the better power play. So for me, it's Montreal 1. What I will mention is the lines for Montreal listed 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not really the way that they have been run since Kirby Dach got hurt. Like, 2 of the 3 lowest ice time guys Montreal has since Kirby Dach got hurt are Laine and Beck, who are, quote, on the second line. Like, Montreal's fourth line, that Heineman, Evans, Armia line, is kind of like a pseudo second line right now by ice time. You know what I mean? So I think if you're looking for Montreal depth, like, there's playable depth all throughout. I would honestly probably do like a Armia Heineman 2-man or something like that. Like, they're getting 13, 14 minutes. It's not a lot, but they're really cheap. You can pair them with Toronto. Buffalo depth sure as hell ain't much to talk about. And that Montreal fourth line, they've actually been good this year. Like, not just, get lucky, which they have a little bit, but they can drive the play, and they're great defensively. So, if you're looking for some depth from the Habs, I would actually probably go all the way down to the fourth line, but it's the top line that I like best. On the Buffalo side, like, if you want to play Buffalo 1 instead, like, go right ahead. Kulich and Thompson and Peterka, as I mentioned, their offensive numbers really, really good. Ice time is somewhat similar to Montreal's. Maybe Kulich will get like 15 to 16 minutes, and Thompson and Peterka 18 to 20, something like that. There is a lot of ownership on Tuch, Cousins, Greenway, assuming that's the line, but Tuch and Greenway have been really good together this year. 80 shot attempts, 3.87 expected goals per 60, only 50 minutes together. It's not a big sample, but that is coming out of the gate strong, to say the least. So yeah, if you want to dip down to the third line, I think that's okay. But, Tuch gets quite a bit of ice time. Him and Greenway have generally been playing well together since Greenway got there from Minnesota. Cousins is Cousins. He is what he is. But like you said, I think they can run over the Montreal middle six. So I think for me in this game, it goes Montreal 1, then Buffalo 2. And then if you don't want to pick them, go with God. You're on your own.
Yeah, so we're on opposite sides of this game now. one point that you made, it's like the power play is better for Montreal since Line and Hudson got there. I think that's why I prefer Buffalo 1 over Montreal 1 as a stack, because if I'm going to do something in that power play matchup, I know Line doesn't get a lot of minutes, but if Buffalo gives them 3-4 opportunities on the power play, Line and Hudson are going to be involved, so.
Hey, man, 5-gamer power play stack, baby.
It's like the water boy. Last game of the season, no holding anything back now. Montreal has killed Buffalo all season. It is true. I try to stay away from the BVP stats because, as Cliffy mentioned on the start of the show, hockey is a very random game. If Caulfield gets a hat trick tonight, I probably will be disappearing for the next 4 days. But, no, I'll take my punishment like a man. Tampa Bay Lightning. Oh, I had a question. Would you rather play that Cousins line at 11% or this Florida 2 line at 14%? They're similarly priced.
I mean, we'll talk about it in a second, but probably Buffalo.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. I just saw that ownership coming in now, and I was like, damn, go play Buffalo 2 instead. But yeah, Tampa Bay Lightning with a 2.5 total heading into Florida. That sounds so stupid. Tampa Bay is heading into Florida. They're already in Florida. They're going to Sunrise, which is like Miami. The Panthers have a 3 total. Florida going Reinhart for Hagee, Barkov, Bennett, Erod, Samoskevich, Lundell, Lusterin, and Bachquist. Tampa going Kucherov, Gensel, Point, Hagel, Sorelli, Zegmis, Gergensons. And that's, I'll mention the third line, Paul, Gonclaves, Chaffee, just because Tampa decided to take Hagel and Hedman off the top power play and put in Mitchell Chaffee and Darren Radish. So the top power play unit is now Tampa 1, Mitchell Chaffee, Darren Radish. I mean, that's, I don't know if I'm running out to play Tampa Bay tonight, but there are some good value on Chaffee and Darren Radish here tonight. The thing is, this is not a great matchup. Florida takes, if they start taking a bunch of penalties, then, maybe they get there. They're cheap enough where you can take a flyer. Tampa 1, 21,700 with 4.9% projected ownership and 19.2% top 2 stack. They're fully correlated, which, puts them in play in MME. But in single entry, if you're going up against Barkov on a 5-game slate and you're more expensive than the Barkov line, I'm probably out on you. So I'm probably out on that Tampa top line now. If you're making 20, 100, whatever, and, you hope Florida takes 4 or 5 penalties, yeah, Tampa 1 could pay off there. But in single entry for me, it's hard to prioritize Tampa 1 at that price, especially when the Barkov line is $700 cheaper. There's other lines that I like as well. Tampa 2, they're still going to get their minutes, Sorelli and Hagel for sure. They haven't been great in a small sample with Gergensons. That may even out. It's a very small sample. That they're going to see a bunch of that Bennett, Rodriguez, Samoskevich line. They've also been good. At 14.5 at 5.7%, I don't mind a 2-man as Sorelli Hagel. Hagel still plays a ton at 5-on-5. Anyway, they're fine. I'm just kind of on Tampa here. My interest is more on the Florida side. Now that top line, 21,000, 21.3% top 2, 9.2% projected ownership. We talk about this line a lot, about the dump and chase and not creating a bunch. Their expected goals for is slowly creeping up over the past few weeks. That top line for Tampa, Gensel, Point, Kucherov, it got to a point earlier in the season they broke them up because they couldn't stop a nosebleed defensively. Now they've kind of shorted up a little bit, but they're still pretty leaky. 2.8 expected goals against per 60. That's well below league average. So I don't mind Florida 1 here at 21K. Lots of positive leverage. They're not my favorite play in the expensive range, but they're not my least favorite. So I don't mind them 5-10 lineups. In single entry, they're on the list. Will they make the cut? I'm not sure. Florida 2, 14,100, 13.9% projected ownership. Like Cliff and I kind of alluded to, we'd rather just go play Buffalo 2 there. If you want to one-off Samoskevich, want to one-off Bennett, fine. But I think if you need even cheaper, I don't mind like a Lundell, Luosterainen 2-man, something like that. But for me, my favorite line in this game is Florida 1.
Yeah, I'll start on the Tampa side. I don't really have a ton of interest, at least in the Tampa top line. I was looking at the top line's numbers against Alexander Barkov going back to last year. In the last 5 games these teams have played against each other, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov against Alexander Barkov, 42 shot attempts per 60, 0.75 expected goals for per 60, and 0 goals. Not a meat grinder to say the least. Not a ton of ice time, but it kind of jives with what that top line has done this season just in general. Like Florida won 46 shot attempts against, 1.9 expected goals against, 1 actual goal against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. These guys are just absolutely death for opposing top lines. I'll talk about Florida in a second. Both these top lines are coming in with under 10% projected. And whether a line is 5% or 9% on a 5-game slate, I don't really care that much. At that point, I'll just look to the specific matchup. And this specific matchup for Tampa 1 is absolutely just not it. So out on Tampa 1, I'm definitely not playing Tampa 3. It's just not. Paul and Chaffee, 1.5 expected goals, 48 shot attempts per 60 minutes this year. That's just, it's their average night is like facing the Barkov line night after night. So that's just not it. So like kind of by default, it would be Tampa 2. I'm going to be honest. I don't have interest in stacking players that are playing alongside Zemgus Girgensons. Like I like Girgensons is one of those guys where like if I was building a team, he's a guy I would want on my 4th line. I don't want him on my scoring line. You know what I mean? He is terrible offensively. So like if you want a one-off Brandon Hagel or something like that, then okay. Full on stack, I think I'm just full on out on Tampa Bay. So kind of by default for me, this is a Florida game. The Florida top line, you mentioned their problems, 2.8 expected goals, 1.9 actual goals per 60. They haven't been scoring a lot. It's to the point now where Verhaeghe got booted off the top power play unit. Like our buddy Mackie Samoskevich, he's on the top power play now. So, even if you don't want to pay up $21K for Florida 1, I think you're fine taking off Verhaeghe and putting on Samoskevich. Like that's a $3,300 savings. So all of a sudden that 21K line is 17,700. So I just because of that, I do think I like the Florida side better here. And, over the last 5 weeks of actual play, Florida, 3 power play opportunities per game. That's the 3rd highest mark in the league since Christmas. They have the 6th highest rate of power play opportunities per game in the league. Tampa's starting to take more penalties. Like Tampa's penalty kill has generally been fine, but they're also starting to take a few more penalties. So, they're still not a heavily penalized team, but, the way that Florida's drawing power plays, I kind of like the Florida power play here. So like a Barkov, Reinhart, Samoskevich stack or something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. And that's a mid-price stack that you can put in with, Buffalo or San Jose or the Rangers or Montreal or something like that, and then still leave yourself enough room to pay up for a couple decent defensemen. So Florida 1 for me, maybe you might want to take out Verhaeghe and put in Samoskevich instead or something like that. Florida 2, like I don't have an issue with them, and actually that second line's been pretty good. Like low key, Mackie Samoskevich is having a really good rookie season. He's generally been down in the bottom 6 and on the second power play unit, which is why he's obviously doesn't have Celebrini, Michkov, Hudson numbers, but if you look at his per minute production, it's pretty good, especially for a rookie. I think there's a reason why he's the guy that's been on the second line without Tkachuk there and not Luosterainen or Bachfist or even Nosek or something like that. Like, it's Samoskevich has earned it. And that second line is at 3.1 expected goals for, 2.1 against, and over 65 minutes together. That's not bad. Sam Bennett, 84 shots in his last 20 games, like 4.2 shots per game over the last month and a half, like 2 months, including the break. So I don't really mind Florida 2. But considering that you can just move Samoskevich up with Barkov and Reinhart, and Barkov and Reinhart are going to play 20 to 22 minutes, play in all the key situations, including top power play. Samoskevich has, correlated with them on the power play. I kind of like doing like a Reinhart, Barkov, Samoskevich stack. I think that's what I have the most interest in this game. If you want to play Florida 2, that's fine. I think Sam Bennett as a one-off actually is okay as well, because he's playing 18 to 19 minutes and he doesn't really need a goal or an assist to reach value. Like, this guy can put up 8 shots and you're fine. So I think Bennett as a one-off is fine, but as a stack, I think it's Reinhart, Barkov, Samoskevich. If you want to play Verhaeghe, go ahead. I've outlined before why he's struggling this season, and I think his move off the top power play is indicative of the way that he's actually playing. So Barkov, Reinhart, Samoskevich. Honestly, other than that, not a lot here that I really like.
Yeah, Samoskevich, the boy likes to shoot, so that's really good for DFS, and he's 3,800. So, oh boy, New York Islanders with a 2.9 total heading into Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have a 3 total. Rangers beat the Panthers, the Predators last night 4-0. Johnny Quick, 35 save shutout. Going to be Igor, who sucks in net. Rangers going Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Zibanejad, Miller, Cooley. I will mention Brodzinski, Juuso Parsin, and Brennan Othman just because they're under 10K. Islanders going Horvat, Lee, Pajot, Nelson, Palmieri, Holmstrom. I don't particularly like this game, and there's a lot of ownership on it. Now, here's the thing. Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere have been very, very good all season. They're 18,000 even, 14.1% top 2 stack, 14.5% projected ownership. The Islanders' penalty kill sucks so much, but they don't take a lot of penalties. And, Rangers kind of in the middle of the pack with drawing the penalties. Here's why I don't really want to play this line in single entry. For $700 more, I could go get Buffalo 1 or Montreal 1, and they're both in better power play matchups because both teams take more penalties. Now, if you want to play them, that's perfectly fine. I think for me, I'm going to spend the extra $700 and go play either Buffalo 1 or Montreal 1. For $2,200 cheaper, I can play Zibanejad, Miller, and Cooley. You get 2 guys on the top power play unit there. Same as the Panarin line. Now, they've been together for, I think, 2 games or 3 games at 5-on-5. They're scoring a lot of goals. They're not creating a bunch. It's a very small sample. And I think that will come up because Cooley is like an Energizer bunny. I kind of like that line. And the way the Islanders set up their lines, Horvat, Lee, Pajot, Nelson, Palmieri, Holmstrom, they aren't good defensively at all. They're bad. So I think in this instance, I'm going to save the $2,200 and go Zibanejad, Miller, Cooley. Again, if you want to play the Panarin Trocheck line, they play heavy minutes. Obviously, Miller plays heavy minutes. Cooley will get his 15. You'll see Trocheck and Panarin above 20. Lafreniere will get 17, 18. Obviously, it's baked into the price, but I'll go Rangers second line here. If you need something super cheap, you can pluck 2 guys off the third line, like a Parsin and Brodzinski, Othman. I saw the winner of the 20 last night had a one-off Brett Berard. He had a shot bonus on a goal and 2 blocks at min price, but he is on the fourth line and plays 11 minutes, so that feels a little chasey. So it would be a couple guys on the third line. On the Islanders side, I get the ownership there. Rangers on a back-to-back. It is Igor and net. However, they've kind of gotten better defensively by subtraction. I know Fox isn't in there.
I was going to say, getting rid of Lindgren is nice, but you also lost the top 5 defensemen in the world.
Yeah. But you have, Zach Jones is in the lineup, but you have Urho Vakanainen, you have Borgen and Miller and Calvin DeHaan. Like, they're a little bit more defensively responsible, I would say, than a Ryan Lindgren going to try to, put his face in front of a slap shot. I'll be quick on the second line. I have no interest in Nelson Palmieri Holmstrom at 17-2 without Sipelkoff. So I'm out on them. If you do want to play Horvat, Lee, Pajot, they have been good offensively, not great defensively, but for $100 more, right around the same ownership in top 2, I would rather just go play the Millers, Zibanejad, Cooley line. If you want to play Horvat, Lee, Pajot, fine. I'm not interested in playing the Islanders at 15% against Igor.
Yeah, I'll start on the Rangers side. I was looking up, because obviously losing Adam Fox is a really, really big deal. But I was looking at how the different Rangers lines and combinations have fared with and without Adam Fox. Generally speaking, it affects the other everybody but the Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line. Like, that line can generally be pretty good offensively, regardless of which defensemen are on the ice. It's everybody else that kind of suffers. And I think in a nutshell, that kind of makes sense, because obviously Fox is by far the best puck moving defenseman they have. But, that trio of forwards is talented enough that if just one defenseman can get any of them the puck, they can do the rest of the work. Whereas, once you get to those second and third lines, not quite as much, though I guess having JT Miller helps. But that's what kind of worries me for that Zibanejad line, right? Is that Zibanejad goes out with like Keandre Miller, Will Borgen or something like that, and they're just stuck in a defensive role all game. You know what I mean? I think they're like, I don't have anything against Zibanejad, Cooley, and Miller, especially because Zibanejad and Cooley, when Riley Smith was on that line, they were pretty good. Like, surprisingly good, considering how bad Zibanejad's first half of the season went. So, maybe there will be something there with Miller. But, $18K for Trocheck, Panarin, Lafreniere, who legitimately, they haven't been like in a, last year they were an elite line. This year they've been a really good line. 3 expected goals, 2.9 actual goals in nearly 250 minutes together since Christmas. Like, Panarin and Trocheck still playing 19 to 21 minutes. Like, imagine going back 4 months and saying this Rangers top line is going to be 18K. Like, there's times when this line was like 22,000, right?
Yeah.
So I don't mind Rangers 1 here, actually. For me, it'd be Rangers 1 or Rangers 2. This is not a game where I'm looking at the depth. Like, all due respect to Johnny Brodzinski and Matt Rempe, but those aren't the stacks I'm looking for. I would go Rangers 1, then Rangers 2. I think it also depends how you want to build your lineup as well, like whether you want to get some expensive defensemen in or not, especially where, we'll get to the defensemen later, but like there are some really cheap defensemen on the Rangers side that you can play here tonight. And, if you put them with the second line, then all of a sudden you might be able to fit in like a Florida or something with them. So, we'll talk about that in a second, but I like Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere here. On the Islanders side, here's the thing about that Islanders second line. It's one of those things where like Nelson Palmieri to Holmstrom haven't been bad offensively. 69 shot attempts, 3.3 expected goals, 2.7 actual goals. Not a ton of goal scoring, shooting 8.5%. I have my doubts that line would be much better than 8.5% shooting. You know what I mean? 1, because the Islanders aren't that much better than that. And 2, it's a line with Simon Holmstrom on it. And the other thing is like, do I want to play a line with Simon Holmstrom on it on the road against Igor Shesterkin at 17,200, right? Or do I just, want to pay an extra $100 and go play the Macklin Celebrini line? Or do I want to pay an extra $800 and go play the Tage Thompson line? Like, there's just so for me, that's why I'm kind of out on Nelson and them. For me, it'd be Horvat, Lee, and Pajot, 15,700. Yes, they're coming in over-owned. They've also been good this year. 67 shot attempts, 3 expected goals, 2.6 actual goals. Obviously, their shooting percentage isn't high either. C'est la vie with the New York Islanders. But I'm going to be honest. For me, this is a Rangers game. I don't have a ton of interest in playing the Islanders at all. If I play them, it'd be the Horvat line, but I prefer the Rangers side here. And I would go the Trocheck line, then the Zibanejad line, then the Horvat line.
Yeah, and just to hammer home your point about why it's the Rangers game, Bo Horvat line, 3.4 expected goals against per 60, 5.5 actual. Nelson line, 3.2 expected goals against. You know what I mean? Like, they've just been bad defensively. It is going to be Sorokin, so, like, he is Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I guess so is Igor, and they're pals. But, I don't know. Rather play the Rangers. San Jose Sharks with a 2.3 total, the absolute disrespect. Like, Toronto is not a good defensive team. Going into Toronto, the Leafs have a 3.8. Toronto going Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Nylander, Tavares, Holmberg, McMahon, Domi, Robertson. Sharks going Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund, Smith, Zetterlund, Wenberg. Celebrini was banged up, and this is the front end of a back-to-back for the Sharks. However, he is saying he's playing, so he's probably going to play. He is labeled a game-time decision, but it's pointing towards him playing. Now, let's address the elephant in the room here. Toronto 1 is 24,100. In 350-ish minutes this season, 3.3 expected goals for, 4 actual. That's a great number. However, at 24,000, you want better. At 24,000, you want Colorado 1 type numbers. And you just don't have that. Now, this is an elite, probably the best power play spot on the board, which is crazy considering Montreal, Buffalo, Islanders, Tampa are on this slate. None of them have a very good penalty kill. Sharks penalty kill is atrocious. 24-1 is a bit expensive here, especially when we talk about the power play. Willie Nylander is the most important part of that power play. He's the Dylan Guenther of the Leafs. Like, I like Mitch Marner.
He's like the Dylan Guenther of Patrick Laine's.
Yeah, the Dylan Guenther of Patrick Laine's. I like Mitch Marner despite me slamming him all the time. Like, I just want him to shoot the puck more. He's $8K. Willie Nylander is $200 more. You know what I mean? So, like, if you want to do some sort of, like, expensive power play stack, I think you just start with Nylander and Matthews. And if you want to add in a third piece, go ahead. It's similar to, like, when the Edmonton power play was rolling last year. You just kind of put in McDavid and Draisaitl and go about your day. If you wanted to put in Hyman, you do it. Like, 24-1, it is very price prohibitive, especially with this dynamic pricing. They're coming in under 10%. The second line's coming in under 10%. For me, I would do I think I would do like a Nylander one-off, a Matthews one-off. I'd go Matthews, Nylander, Tavares for really stupid expensive. At that point, if I'm going to go stupid expensive, I'll just go like Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and just hate myself and play Johnny Brzezinski and Matt Rempe or something like that. If you can fit them comfortably, they're fine. But again, like, I want better numbers for that price. I think a Nylander one-off is my favorite from the Toronto side. I think pairing him with Matthews makes a lot of sense. I will mention the Toronto third line, 13-5. Like, they've been pretty good together this season. Depth of San Jose, definitely not it. But again, like, if I'm going to play some Leafs, I want their power play guys. On the Sharks side, that top line for San Jose is very interesting. First of all, Sharks power play is actually decent. Leafs penalty kill sucks. The Matthews line, who they're going to see a fair share of, 2.6 expected goals against, 3.2 actual in a 350-minute sample. That's below league average. The Celebrini line, 3 expected goals for, 3.2 actual. For 17-3, under 10% ownership. Again, I'll go bang the drum. I love the San Jose top line. I've been playing them a bunch. But, Celebrini is, if you watch him play, I could see why this guy's number 1 pick. I like the Shark side a bit more from a full stacking standpoint, if that makes sense. Obviously, my favorite plays in this game are Nylander and Matthews, but they're very price prohibitive. And if I had to stack a full line in this game, it would be San Jose 1. The second line, Wenberg, Zetterlund, Smith at 12,400 is interesting as a filler line, just because you get Will Smith on the top power play line, or top power play. And when he has actual line mates that aren't named Barclay Goodrow, Luke Cunnin, he actually looks like an NHL caliber player. Wenberg is whatever for DFS, but he's cheap enough where you can put him in. He's a good play driver for the other 2 guys. I don't mind San Jose 2 as a filler. My favorite line as a full stack in this game is San Jose 1, but I as one-offs or 2-mans, I prefer the Leaf side.
All right. I got to talk about the Toronto side first, just because of their pricing. You're right. They are really expensive. The thing is it's not that they're just expensive, right? 9,500 for Austin Matthews at home against San Jose, I don't think is that bad of a price, honestly. He's at 16.9 DK points. That's higher than Nikita Kucherov, and Matthews really isn't having his typical Matthews type season. Think about he's been a better per game DraftKings producer than Kucherov, and Matthews is having kind of a down year. That's how good he still is. So I think 9,500 is fine. I think 8,200 for Nylander is fine. It's Matthew Knies at 6,600 that is absolutely preposterous. I'll bring up the projection from Stochastic on Knies here. 6.92 DK points, 1.05 DK points per $1,000. I think it was the same case last week in another one of the games. Was it against Chicago maybe? Where it was just a wild overpricing of that one specific player. Yeah, I do think Marner is a bit overpriced as well at 8K, but it's not horrific. 6,600 for Matthew Knies. I don't care. The matchup is horrific. I do not care the matchup. He should not be more expensive than Brandon Hagel. Brandon Hagel might have a 40-40 season this year, and he's cheaper than Matthew Knies. That's the problem. So, you have one off Austin Matthews, perfectly fine. Matthews and Nylander 2-man, or Matthews and Marner 2-man, or something like that, perfectly fine. I have a real tough time playing Matthew Knies at 6,600. If he has a goal and an assist, right, that's still not even good value. And that's a lot to ask from a player like this. I was looking earlier, to get to about, I think it's 19, he'd need about 19 DK points because we usually look for 3x from a player, regardless of price. To get to about 19 DK points, he's done that, I believe, 3 times this season, and he's spent most of the year on one of the top 2 lines. So, obviously, Toronto 1 is the best play on the board. You mentioned their top stack percentage. It's over 30%. I have no issue if somebody wants to play Toronto 1 because there's a bunch of cheap guys elsewhere that they want to play. Go ahead and fill your boots. Like I said, I think the price on Matthews is fine, and Nylander is fine. Marner's a bit overpriced, but it's not completely egregious. What is egregious is Matthew Knies at 6,600. So I'd be more inclined for some sort of 2-man than I would just full-on stacking the top line. Like I said, Matthews Nylander, Matthews Marner, something like that. I will also say that Toronto third line is a little interesting to me. Bobby McMann, Max Domi, Nick Robertson. 3.3 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 and over 170 minutes together. I wrote about them at my newsletter, I believe, last week. The big thing is Max Domi, for all his faults, he's still a really good playmaker. And Nick Robertson and Bobby McMann are shooters. It's one of those combinations where that 3-man unit kind of makes sense. And I don't know if anybody's looked at the San Jose depth lately, but it's absolutely atrocious. Like I was looking earlier, with basically their top two lines off the ice, 3.6 goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. It's just absolutely, terrible. And, we say it often when good teams are playing bad teams, they like to spread out the ice time quite a bit. So this might be a game where Matthews and Marner play, 18 to 19 minutes rather than 21 plus or whatever. Figured Josh was going to drop out. Looked like he was struggling with his internet a little bit. Where they play 18 to 19 minutes and that Domi line plays like 14, 15, maybe 16 minutes, depending on what the score's like. So I don't mind Toronto 3 here, actually. I think they're fine. But yeah, obviously it's the Toronto power play guys I like best, but specifically like Matthews, Nylander, and Marner in that order. On the San Jose side, Josh was mentioning San Jose 1. That San Jose top line. There he is. He's back. Somewhat. That San Jose top line.
My StreamYard crashed. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. That technology, it's a bitch, man. 2.9 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60 for that San Jose top line. Josh mentioned how bad the Toronto top line has been defensively. The issue is like Toronto's goaltending has actually been really good. Both Stolarz and Woll have been good all season. Goalies have bad games once in a while, but they've generally been very good. But at 17,300, I think they're eminently playable here. There's just not a lot in that price range. Like if you look under 18K, you're talking Islanders, maybe some sort of king stack, Rangers second line, Islanders second line, Buffalo second line. Like there's just not a lot there. We talked about that Reinhart, Barkov, Samoskevich stack. That comes in and around that price. I'd rather play them, but San Jose 1, I think, is eminently playable here. San Jose 2, Josh mentioned them, have been really good together. I was looking at Zetterlund and Will Smith in their minutes without Celebrini. 3.2 expected goals, 4.3 actual goals per 60. Smith is on the top power play unit. The Toronto second line has actually been pretty good defensively. That's what kind of worries me. If they can get some matchups against the third and fourth lines, I think they'll be fine. But for me, it's Toronto power play guys without Matthew Nyes, and then San Jose 1, then Toronto 3 and then San Jose 2 is kind of my order for this game.
I missed the slamming of Nyes, but I had that circled as an Andrei Kuzmenko Cliffy meltdown spot.
Pretty much. I mean, it's actually like, I don't get me wrong. I think Nyes is a better player than Kuzmenko and like even a better DFS player, but it's still a wild overpricing.
Oh yeah, he should be like high 4s, low 5s. Last game of the night here, Los Angeles Kings with a 3.3 total heading into Chicago. The Hawks have a 2.2. Kings go. I can do this in order because all the Kings lines have a higher top 2 than any of the Chicago top lines. Kings, here's the thing. We don't fucking know what the Kings are going to do. I don't think we got lines during the show. They've been mixing up their lines every game since the break has ended. The one line that stuck together last game was Danault, Moore, Foegele. Now, in top stacks, we have Fiala, Kempe, Byfield, Moore, Danault, Foegele, Kopitar, Laferriere, Turcotte.
Just to kind of cut you off real quick, Mayor's Manor, which is a blog that covers Los Angeles closely, they just did their projected lineup, so it's nothing confirmed. But what we have in top stacks is what they have projected for the game tonight.
That's kind of annoying, but it's so funny. The top 2 stack line for Chicago does not have Bedard on it. So the top line for Chicago per top 2 stack is Donato, Teravainen, and Mikheyev. Then Bedard, Nazar, Slaggert, Bertuzzi, Anthony Ciu, Colton Dock. Wow. I'm out on Chicago. You want to play them? Go watch the 1 instead. The Kings, if they do run Fiala, Kempe, Byfield, they're 21,300. That's a bit of a problem. considering how often this coach is mixing and matching their lines. And it's kind of annoying from the sense that, like, this is an excellent 5-on-5 spot. It's not the best power play spot. And on top of that, the Kings power play is atrocious. So it's not even like, oh, that's power play stack the Kings and call it a day. You know what I mean? Like 3 shifts into the game, if they go down a goal, which is unlikely, but you could see Kempe and LaFerriere flip-flopped. You can see, Deneau in between Fiala and LaFerriere in the first period. You just don't know. 21-3 as it is tough to fit in. Like, Fiala's been playing great from a DFS standpoint. They've just been mixing and matching so much. The only line that feels safe for me to play is Deneau Moore Fogle at 16-2. Like, there's no matchup concerns here. The only thing that is of concern for me is this coach flopping the lines around. So if you want to one-off Kopitar or you want to one-off Fiala, do something like that, you can play Byfield, Kempe, and Fiala and hope they stay together the whole game, or do like old Kings one and hope they go back together, like Kopitar, Kempe, Turcotte, something like that. Like, I don't know. It's just hard to know without concrete lines. So I would say the only line right now that I'd full stack is the more forward.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I was looking at that Chicago Donato, Teravainen, Mikheyev line. Donato and Teravainen have almost 100 minutes together with anybody but Connor Bedard on their line. 2.9 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, that's actually pretty good. And Donato and Teravainen both on the top power play. Now, the Kings' penalty kill has generally been pretty good, at least basically since like Halloween. Here's the other thing is that, Chicago with no Seth Jones. It's one of those things where, like, Seth Jones was paid like he was a top 10 defenseman in the NHL, and obviously he's not a top 10 defenseman in the NHL, but I also think the fact that he was overpaid kind of overshadowed that he's actually a good defenseman. You know what I mean? I forget who it was. One of the analytics people put it this way. It's like Seth Jones isn't elite at any one thing, but he's good at basically everything. And Chicago doesn't have anybody to replace him. And the big problem is on the power play. Remember earlier I talked about how Buffalo's power play, their shot attempts went down 30% without Jason Zucker. Over the last 2 seasons, the Chicago power play, their shot attempts go down 25% without Seth Jones. If you look at just this season alone, the power play is night and day. Like, with Jones, the goal rate like literally doubles. So all of a sudden, Chicago had, their one strength offensively this season had been a power play whenever Jones was healthy. That's gone now. So I don't know. I don't have a ton of interest in Chicago. I'm going to be honest. I think if I played anything from the Blackhawks, it probably would be Donato, Teravainen, Mikheyev, or just like a Donato, Teravainen 2-man or something like that. I don't have a ton of interest in the Blackhawks, even though like the Kings defensively haven't been great. Like, I was looking since Drew Doughty's return, 10th by expected goals against, like 17th by goals against. There haven't been elite, which, not a big surprise. But the Blackhawks, most of the lines still can't generate offense, and their power play is going to be worse without Jones. So I think Donato, Teravainen, and Mikheyev would be the line, but honestly, just not a lot of interest there. On the Los Angeles side, what I will say is that despite the Kings often switching the Fiala and Kopitar lines around, Fiala and Byfield have been a pretty consistent duo, regardless of the game, going back like well over a month now. That line as a full line has been really good together. 3.5 expected goals, 4.7 actual goals. I don't mind playing Fiala, Kempe, Byfield for this reason. One, Fiala and Kempe are going to be on the top power play unit together. Power play's not been good, but at least, we always say power play time correlation is better than none. And the other is Fiala and Byfield, regardless of what happens with the lines, are probably going to stay together. So with a couple left turns, you kind of get correlation between them. You know what I mean? So I don't mind playing them. But 21,300, I think, is fairly preposterous for any Kings line, considering that this team has a very bad power play. I said that the other night, and then they went 1-for-1 against the Blues. Like, okay, man.
They could stop me and you from scoring on the power
Yeah,
play.
exactly. So I think I'm kind of with you. I think it'd be more Fogle and Deneau. 16,200, I think, is still a little expensive. At least they're getting good ice time. You know what I mean? Like, that line is getting like 17 to 18 minutes, 3.3 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5. You don't need to stack the Kings for the power play matchup. One, because they're rarely in a good one. And two, this isn't a good one anyway. And that line's been tremendous at 5-on-5. So I think I agree with you. More Deneau and Fogle is where I would go. I don't mind Fiala, Kempe, Byfield, but at the same price as Florida 1, like, I think it's kind of an easy pass for me. So more Deneau, Fogle for me.
Yeah. Just a note on the Donato line. If you are playing them, I will just give you this reminder. It is trade deadline week. Kevin Weeks did say there's a lot of teams checking in on Donato. Just be aware, if there's nothing close right now, but if you are playing that line, he could get pulled for trade reasons. And what was I going to say? I forget what I was going to say. Let's move on to defensemen here. Oh, I was going to say, I remembered. If you're wondering why Edmonton struggles at times this season, look at the 3 guys that they lost and how good of seasons they've having. Will Fogle, Dylan Holloway, 20 goals, Broberg coming into his own. Just saying. Let's talk about defensemen here. Anytime I can take a shot at the Oilers or Leafs, I will absolutely take it. Top of the board for defensemen here, we have Rasmus Dahlin, Mike Matheson. Those are the 2 guys, 6K or above. Right below them, there is a range of Dobson, Tony DeAngelo, Morgan Riley, Victor Hedman, Jake Wallman. That is a circus because Dobson isn't even on the top power play unit. Neither is Morgan Riley, and he sucks. Matheson isn't on the top power play unit. He does play an absolute boatload of minutes, though. He's been, 23 or above, even 25 or above at times. I think, honestly, it would be Rasmus Dahlin 1, Jake Wallman 2, that top range. Like, Matheson's fine. Tony DeAngelo, since getting to the Islanders and being on the top power play, he has 0 power play points. So why he's 5,800 is beyond my comprehension. So I think it would be Dahlin 1, Wallman 2, Matheson 3.
Yeah, the top projected defenseman is Dahlin, 10.4 DK points. Now, point per dollar, Jake Wallman grades out significantly better. I think that kind of makes sense. But for me to go Dahlin, then Wallman, sorry. And I'll mention Seth Jones. He's not projecting particularly well, but sometimes I do wonder like what he would look like on a better team. I know he's starting off in the second power play unit. That's why I don't really have a ton of interest in him. But over the last 2 seasons in Chicago, he had a 44-point pace, 190 shots, 160 blocks per 82 games with the Chicago Blackhawks. And now he's on the defending Stanley Cup champions. I do wonder if he's just not going to be significantly more productive than he was. And he was also already a pretty productive defenseman. I think 5K is a little steep without top power play minutes, but I don't mind him. Alex Romanoff, he's projecting extremely well, 1.9 DK points per 1,000 on Stochastic here tonight. Lane Hudson is in a good power play matchup, so I'll mention Lane Hudson again. Owen Power, he's reasonably priced, projecting reasonably well. Also, Jake McCabe has a strong projection for Toronto, especially with Chris Tanev out. McCabe's been regularly playing like 22 to 23 minutes. He's a guy that can put up a couple block shots and a shot every game. So don't mind Jake McCabe either in that mid-price range. There are a lot of for defensemen being priced up, there's actually a lot of cheaper defensemen that I don't mind playing here tonight. Obviously, Zach Jones for the Rangers, power play time. Darren Radish for the Islanders, also getting power play time. Chicago has a couple of defensemen under 3K that I think are worth playing, both Wyatt Kaiser and Ethan Del Mastro. Del Mastro, I think, played 19 minutes in that last game with Seth Jones out of the lineup. He's mid-price. It's the Chicago Blackhawks. They suck, but, if you do need a mid-price defenseman, getting one that's at home and playing 19 minutes, you can't really ask for a lot more than that. If you want to pay up for the Blackhawks, like Alex Vlasic, he's on the top power play now, I guess, but it is what it is. Connor Murphy is projecting a little bit better. He's 3,900. So either of those guys, like Braden Schneider for the Rangers, he's only 3,600. 23 minutes against the Islanders, closer to like 17, 18 minutes of late, but not a bad home matchup. Vladislav Gavrikov for the Kings in a great road matchup. He's projecting extremely well. And I'll mention Connor Timmins. The reason I mentioned Connor Timmins, I think he's overpriced at 3,300, but I do wonder if it's one of those games where like maybe Riley and McCabe and like Ekman Larson and those guys only play 19 to 20 minutes, and then they give some more time to someone like Connor Timmins, like they would the forwards, I think. So I'll throw his name out there, but I do like Jake McCabe better on their blue line.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of cheaper options here tonight. So that's been the biggest issue for me. I don't know about for you, is finding value on the blue line.
No, man, I mentioned that in the Discord today, is like, if I had one question for DraftKings, since they changed their pricing, it's like, why is it that every defenseman that is typically priced under 6K, it's like, well, they're 25% more expensive now, and that's just it. And it's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's like, cool guys. Yeah, like Tony D'Angelo's price is absolutely ridiculous. But, whatever. Let's talk about goalies. Anthony Stolar is 8,600. We occasionally get an $8,600 starter. Like, I know he's been great. And I think, like, cash games, he's fine. In GPPs, like, probably need a shutout at that price, which is possible. It's the Sharks. But in GPPs, I don't know, man. I don't want to spend up 8,600. If it's Kemper for the Kings, like 8,400 is still really expensive. I don't mind it there. Like without Seth Jones, like who's moving the puck? Like they have decent puck movers, but Seth Jones ate so many minutes that it's just like, what is going to happen here? Call me a homer. Don't mind Igor at 8,200. Spencer Knight is interesting at 8K. Like I think he's overpriced. He should be like 7,500, something like that.
Well, yeah, he still has the Florida pricing.
Yeah,
like, it's Bobrovsky. Like Bobrovsky's 8K. If you look at the rest of Chicago goalies, they're 7K or lower, and then Knight's 8,000.
Yeah, so like Knight should be low sevens, but I don't know. Like Kings at times, like there's a reason they've been flip-flopping their lines all the time. They've been having trouble scoring. If you're into goalie ownership, which I am not, goalie ownership doesn't matter. Goalie points matter, but Knight's an interesting play because he's going to see volume, and the Kings have trouble scoring it sometimes. The two that stick out in the low range for me are Vasilevsky and Sorokin. I would lean Vasilevsky there, but I think for me it's between Kemper, Shesterkin, and Vasilevsky.
Yeah. For me, the number one goalie on the board is Igor. Like I get why people may or may not want to play him depending on their bias, but Igor at 8,200. He's facing an Islander. Like I know the Islanders scored 7 goals or whatever. I think it was Saturday afternoon, maybe it's Sunday. Like all these days are starting to blend together. But they're not a high scoring team, and we've seen Igor post massive games. Stolarz is the highest projected goalie. I think it makes sense against San Jose, especially considering how well Stolarz has played. So if you have the 8,600, no problem paying up for Stolarz. Otherwise, I think it's Shesterkin. Right below Shesterkin is Vasilevsky for total projection. He's only 7,400. If you're not paying up 8K and above, I think Vasilevsky's the guy. I do wish Spencer Knight was properly priced and not 8K. So there's not really another expensive. Like I think the only other expensive goalie I might have interest in is Ilya Sorokin. Mentioned in the Discord the other day, but you were talking about how it seems like either has a great game or a bad game. Well, that game against Boston was like one of the 5 or 6, like by goal saved above expected, was one of the 5 or 6 best games of any goalie this season. And then he turns around and gives up 4 goals on 28 shots to the Capitals. So like, I think Sorokin, honestly, at 7,200 is perfectly fine, but I think I'd probably just try to find the extra $200 and play Vasilevsky.
Yeah. We are going to be here. If you were late to the show, we're going to be here every day this week. So you're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. No, but we will be here every day. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go against my boys here tonight. And I'm going to go with a guy whose name has come up in trade rumors. And be interesting to see if he actually gets traded. And I'm going with Alex Tuck.
Buffalo would be kind of, well, we don't have time for that. I am going to go Kevin Fiala. Yeah, so we'll be back tomorrow. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you in the Discord, and let's win some money. How about that?
Good luck tonight, everyone.